Four, three, two, one. Hi, everybody. It's Russ here with UFO Paranormal TV and Flying Saucer Television. And I have Joe Swanson, who is a remote viewer. Amazing. I have been having a little chat earlier, and this is a show you just should not miss. And I've got a funny feeling that Joe's going to be back talking about other things. So, Joe, how did all this start with you then, getting into remote viewing, please?
Well, I got into it through the military, actually. U.S. military. I had enlisted in the U.S. Air Force for working on avionics, and they made me an oxymoron, and put me into military intelligence. And in order to kind of cover up some of the things I did, they gave me a dose of LSD and peyote together.
Wow.
And that basically is done to, in the military sense, to expand your view of reality from what we see, what you and I normally see. And, the reality that we use, or most people use, is a consensus between people. This is what reality is. And so they did that, and they gave me the option of going home or getting treatment for the drugs there. And I chose to go home and get married because I really wanted to get married. And that was about 50 and a half years ago, 1972. And then they treated me as an outpatient at the VA up in Fargo, North Dakota. And they had me doing relaxation therapy with some special tapes from the Monroe Institute. And you're going to find that's going to be really important, the Monroe Institute. And so I did the session there, and they said I was doing real good, but I don't know how I was doing, because by the time I got to, start at my toes and pledge and relax, regression relaxation therapy, by the time I got to my ankles, I was totally out of it. And they'd come in an hour later and wake me up. And they said I was doing excellent. And I had no idea how they could tell that, because they weren't monitoring me as far as I could tell. And then they wanted me to see if I could split my brain hemispheres and control them separately. And so they hooked up galvanic skin response sensors to these two fingers and these two fingers, and those controlled paddles on a Pong game. And I had to play Pong with myself. And once they realized I could separate the hemispheres and control things separately, basically right brain does this and left brain does that. And then they decided I was doing good at that, and I should learn transcendental meditation so I could learn to focus my mind. The introductory section said that they told us about the gray mist, and they told us about the working crew, and how we could take things out of the gray mist and make it into a reality type of thing. And they said if you were really good, you could form clouds into different images. I thought, well, that was kind of cool, but they wanted thousands of dollars, and I was just a poor kid, with a family. And so I said, no, I'm not going to do that. I went outside, and a couple of people say, hey, can you form a cloud? I said, I don't know, I could try. And so I went out there, and they, Mickey Mouse, and how about a sailing boat, and that type of stuff. And we made clouds like that, and I thought that was kind of cool. And okay. And then I went home and I read the book on transcendental meditation, a book on hypnocybernetics, and a book on silver mind control. And because of my background in electronics, the silver mind control was the one that made the most sense. When I went to school for electronics down in the Minneapolis here, where I'm living now, area, I was recalled, and they had a new set of Monroe tapes that they wanted to test me on. And so they tested me on the new Monroe tapes and said I was doing pretty good. And then in 1982, now the whole time from 72 to 82, the military intelligence had been monitoring me, my phones, and they had been monitoring my movements. And so in 1982, one of the guys who had been assigned to me said, set up a double-blind meeting for me, which was really strange. And I knew from the way it was set up, it was double-blind. And the first question he asked is, he said, how the hell did you know when we were tapping the phone? And how the hell did you know when we were turning the tape recorder on and off? And we'd leave the tape recorder on and we turn the phone off, and you knew. And whoever you were talking to, you just said that. And I said, well, I could hear the resonance in the phone lines, the old phone lines. When they put a tap on, you used to hear the resonance and stuff. And he said, well, this is a new switch and it's not supposed to have that. And I said, well, I'm not psychic. And
even though you are.
Well, I didn't want them to know it. So then I got a letter from the VA to come down. They wanted to do a new therapy for me. And so I went down to the Twin Cities from Fargo Moorhead, where I was at. And it's about a 250-mile drive one way. And I got down for this, and they had this fellow named Al Balick. I don't know if you know who Al Balick is, but he was one of the guys. He talked about the Philadelphia experiment and the Montauk Project, and he's tied in with all of them.
Yeah.
And so anyway, he was my psychoanalyst for the hour, and he wanted to judge whether I was a viable candidate for a remote viewer for the Montauk Project. Yeah, apparently I was. He didn't say that at the time. I found out later that it was the Montauk Project because, lab rat, you're kept in the dark and you don't know what it is until, someone exposes it in the media. And anyway, so they flew a therapist from Montauk Island in, and she met me at this building, just an old WPA, Work Progress Administration from the 30s type thing that was used by the military. And it was an old office building that was vacant. And it sat between the river and one of the highways here in the cities and the Mississippi River. And they had our meeting up on the third floor of the building, and the room was staged. So there was tape marks on the floor for where her rolling chair could be. There were tape marks on the floor as to where the desk was supposed to be set. There were tape marks on the desk for where the cassette tape recorder was going to be placed. And there were tape marks under my chair for the chair that I was supposed to sit in, an overstuffed chair.
Yeah.
And there were tape marks on the wall where they hung a picture. And I'm going like, why in the hell would they make this look like a set each time when I come here? And we had the first session, and she played the relaxation tape, and I was out, almost immediately. And came back, and I had a massive headache, like someone had beamed a radar beam at me. I don't know if you have police radar beams over there or not, but when I was driving over the road, I used to, feel the beams coming at me.
Yeah.
And the RF radiation, a little more sensitive to it because I was in electronics. And had this massive headache. I collected my pay for the session and drove home and took aspirin on the way home and tried to get rid of the headache, and it was gone. So the next time I was there, I bounced into the chair, flopped into it to move it off the marks. So anyway, so we were remote. And when I was there during my sessions, all air traffic at the international airport, Minneapolis International Airport, was stopped for the 1 hour, plus and minus a little bit of my session, which I thought was kind of strange too. But what they're doing is they're using the radar, the SAGE radar beam that they had at the airport at that time, to create the frequencies that they wanted and sync them up with whoever was sitting with the frequency they're using on the person in the Montauk Island chair, to do remote viewing. And at first they wanted me to look at different timelines. They were looking for a timeline where someone by the name of George Bush would be Emperor of North America or King of the United States of America. And at that time, George Bush was the head of the CIA. So I found that out afterwards too, because I had no clue who George Bush was at that time. And then something happened and they changed it. And we were supposedly, they had figured out how to open up a wormhole. And we were looking, I was looking through the eyes of an astronaut in a standard US astronaut suit at the time, for EVA's type of, extra vehicle activity. And had a couple lights showing down in front of him, the whole suit type of thing. He was walking through this hallway that was a little strange. It had angles and angles like that for the sides of the hallway, and it had a little flat top and a fairly wide flat bottom. And he was thinking that he was on Mars, and that was some sort of underground thing that had opened up to Mars. And so that was kind of an interesting thing. And the next trip, it was the same thing, only that trip, the hallway was lit. And he still had the suit on. But we went to a doorway, and it opened the doorway, and we looked up, and it was at the bottom of this huge vertical shaft. And the shaft looked like it was lined with windows and balconies of different apartments all the way up. And so that was kind of interesting. And then I had another session. I was just kind of wondering what the hell was going on with everything. And so I decided I'd check out the Montauk base where she was from, Montauk Island, New York. And I noticed that there was an underground facility there. And it was like a labyrinth down there, all the different passageways and stuff that they had. And I had seen one where they were keeping kids and torturing them, because during the first part of the experiment, they wanted to take kids that had been programmed like Manchurian candidates, take them out of this timeline and put them into another one. And so that was kind of horrific. And then I ran into a reptilian in the balls of the base. And I still had a kill on sight order from my time in the service for reptilians. I don't know if you did or not.
Kill on sight, yeah.
Yeah. And
What
how
is
is
it?
I how is I going to kill them as I'm remote viewing, you know? And so I thought, you know, it's a labyrinth down there. If I could create an energy beast that was like a minotaur and have them rampage through there, that might take care of it.
Wow.
And the project was shut down. The first attempt they made on my life was in, I believe, September, as I remember. I had been writing custom software for microcomputers, and a judge had purchased some of my software, and he used it for his people that were going through bankruptcy. And so he gave me a call, and we set up a meeting, and he knew I'd be there whenever I got there. And I went out to go after him, and someone was following me, and so I quickly lost him, but he knew I had an appointment. And so I followed him back over to where the building that the judge was in, which was a tall building in Fargo. And he met like a professional van type of thing. And 4 guys got out of it. And they were wearing black, and they were carrying a canister, and they went into the building. And I was watching them from across the parking lot. And they came down from being up there for a few minutes, and they were arguing, and then the 4 guys in black went away, and there was a siren in the distance. And, ambulance got there, and the guy who had been following me went away, and I waited a few minutes, and the ambulance came down with someone on a gurney and took him up. And they went up to see my client. And I don't know if Tom is alive anymore, but Tom said, "Joe, you wouldn't believe it. The hydraulic elevator leaked, and it gassed everyone in the top 3 floors of the building, and everyone passed out." And I said, "Well, you're lucky to be alive." I made the patch and went home. And the next time was in December of '83. And in December, my family was in our 65 Dodge Dart with I-beam frame on it. And we were rear-ended by a guy, and they took about 18 inches off the frame. So he got promoted and transferred to military intelligence from military police, and left me with chronic pain.
Wow.
So that's just a nutshell of some of the experiences. You can do other things with it. Depends on how much brain function activity you have. Like when the ship jumped and I didn't.
Now, when you're talking about, you've gone from, so when you're talking about the ship, how did you come to be in the ship in the first place?
No memory of that.
Right, I see.
Well, in the Air Force, okay, I had we've gone through a lot. You know, basic training for me was not, you know, all the physical exercise and stuff that most people think of. It was just a little bit of marching, and we go take classes, and they take roll call class, and then they call me out along with different other people to take tests. And we tested and tested and tested and tested and tested. And that was our basic training.
Right.
And finally, we got to shoot a gun on M16, and I qualified as a marksman on it, even in full automatic. And got back to the barracks, and my DI said, "Joe, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to tell you this, but you're going to have to go for extra physical training." That morning, they wanted us to do pull-ups. And while I've never been able to do a pull-up, I can do a chin-up. And it's a pull-up is like
Yeah.
this, and a chin-up is like this,
Yeah.
for those who don't know. And apparently that was something that qualified me for whatever it was they had in mind. And he said, "You may not live through this training." So I'm like, okay, he's joking with me, right? And I said, "Well, do I take my uniforms with me? So I got to change of clothes." He said, "No, they'll give you a new uniform." I said, "How about my personal gear so I can shave, brush my teeth and that stuff?" "No, you won't need to do any of that." I'm going, okay. So he gives me a Post-it note with a little bit of scribbling on it. And he says, "This is how you get there." And I'm going, "Well, what is this?" "Just follow the note. It's how you get there." I arrive, it's about 9 p.m. and we're down in Texas in the summertime, spring, I should say, because it's June. And there's this long 2.5-story building that's all brick. And it's got a garage door that folds up uh, on it that's about 40 foot wide. And outside of it is a big old pine tree. And I'll get to the pine tree in just a minute. But you look into this garage door, and it's like you're looking into a German chocolate cake where a slice has been cut off. There's no light going anywhere outside of the light going right into that slice. The big pine tree, which was something I was supposed to look for, the shadow was going down, straight down underneath this. This is 9 o'clock at night, and the shadow should be at a big angle like that. It should be up against the building and everything like that, and it wasn't. And I got to the door, and I heard this voice say, "Why are you here?" And I said, "To learn to do a pull-up, sir." And then 3 days later, the same voice said, "Why were you here?" "To learn to do a pull-up, but I can do a chin-up." And he said, "Return to your barracks." That night I slept with my one eye open because of the night terrors. I had never had night terrors before. And the memories started coming back through the night terrors because they were repressed. And there were things that I just did not want to remember. And I couldn't talk about it because when I was released, the paperwork I was released with, I went in as a E1, which is, private. And the paperwork said I had reached the rank of E7 before I was released. And E7 is a master sergeant, and the fastest you can get there is with 10 years of service.
Wow.
There were other tests that they ran off for me after that 3-day period, and before the LSD peyote incident. So
Yeah.
that's how I got there. In the 90s, they had trained members of the 86 Airborne, and they're using them for remote viewing, and they're using me for a target. And I decided it was time to defend myself.
Yeah.
And so you can say desist or die. Now, I always wondered why the aliens, if they could control me like that when I went into when I was in the service, just plant stuff into my head, why they didn't do that all the time. And I was doing some teaching on different alternative healing methods and doing these presentations and from groups of about 20 to 30 people. And I thought, well, I'll just project it into their heads, And so the presentation goes really well. And the people there are just really amazed, And I overheard a couple talking to each other as they got out. When I was in that presentation, I understood absolutely everything he said, and it made absolute sense. And now I can't remember a thing that he said after walking out the door.
Yeah.
And that's why you don't present into people's head. They had me learning through program learning while I was, I wanted to be home. And so they had me, when the ship jumped to go to Saturn, I stayed in place in my silver suit. And they said, use the heads up display and go through programs to learn. Now, you, on the other hand, had a different experience.
Yeah.
You didn't have to go through that.
Not with the normal military. No, not with the regular military on Earth.
No.
I had basically an alien race, put me into their military unit. So
Yeah.
I had to go through, and there's been a lot of things that I seem to have lost, like with my memory. I had 100% memory recall at one time until
I
I
did
was rushed
too.
to hospital. When I was rushed to hospital, when I came out of hospital, I realised that a lot of the things what I remembered, I could feel the memory being taken out like that, while I was sat down talking to my dad. And so different armies,
Oh, yeah.
same
Well,
techniques.
one of the things I had learned in the studying when I was with the Caucasian aliens, as I call them, was that there's over 400,000 intelligent humanoid races in the Milky Way. And there's over twice as many intelligent non-humanoid races. And one of the things they wanted me to impress on me was that be kind, be respectful. When you're meeting these, because most of the ones you're meeting are going to be our friends. And that was pretty much the case. So, what more? How deep would you like me to go into?
Let me just, someone has sent us a message about involvement. So, what length aliens are involved? Do you think it is human controlled experiments, or are the ETs in charge of remote viewing? So he's yeah, good question.
Yeah, you've got a lot of good questions there. It's both.
Yeah.
Human and humans have come up quite a bit in there. What they've been able to do lately, as I was saying before.
Yeah.
I know of a person who was working on a project to re-engineer the silver suit that I was in, and I think that's probably the suit that you were in when you were there. You called it the white suit, and I call it the silver suit.
Yeah.
So
we call it the life force.
Yeah,
it's our life force suit.
Yeah, it monitors everything in your body. It can
everything.
Work. It can work. If you lose an arm or something else, it can put a tourniquet on. It can
Everything.
allow. It can allow
you don't
some.
need to go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
Yeah,
none of that
you don't
stuff.
need food.
Yeah.
Yeah, quite amazing. quite amazing thing.
Yeah. Anyway, I forgot the last part of the question. I won't
Yeah,
do
so
that.
about remote viewing, do you think
Yeah,
it's them or us or both?
it's hard on people. And so when I came back, the Air Force said that I had 100% disability. And I went to file for my disability. And they told me they had no record of me ever serving.
Oh, yeah.
And, but I had the card that I had used at the Fargo VA that said I was service-connected disability.
Wow.
And that's what allowed me to go to school for electronics. And still they had no record. And a few years back, we had fallen on some hard times and had to go through bankruptcy. And the bankruptcy attorney knew someone in Washington who knew a psychiatrist who knew a general that had the clearance to look at my file. And after he looked at my file, he gave me 70% disability, which means I am not able to work at all. And that is typically what they gave everyone in the 86th Airborne that were trained to do this too. Because you grasp things that other people just have no idea is going on.
Yeah.
And actually, this whole project, the Montauk Project, was in '83. And the Philadelphia experiment was in '43. And that was based initially on work done in England during the start of World War II when the Germans were mining the harbors.
Mm-hmm.
A man named Francis Bittner, or Bitter, was a physicist studying in magnetism, and the US sent him over to England to help with the thing. The British had contacted, put an ad in the paper, like a classified, looking for anyone who knew anything about how to make a ship invisible. And they got a response from a stage magician, and I don't know what his name was, but he said, anyway, Francis went over, watched this whole thing, and he did a stage show, made a rabbit disappear, made a gal disappear on stage. And when the show was over, they went backstage, and Francis said, well, is that how do you make the ship disappear? Well, backstage, he had a pedestal, and on the pedestal was an aquarium, and in the aquarium was water and a boat. And the magician went over to the wall, turned the switch on, the boat disappeared. Turned the switch off, the boat reappeared. So Francis said, is that the way you made the gal disappear or the rabbit disappear? And he said, no. This method hurts anything that's organic.
Alive.
So they take it back to the US. They talk with this guy named Nikola Tesla. I don't think anyone's ever heard of him.
No.
And he looks at it and he says, I'm not going to do this for you because it's going to hurt people.
Yeah.
But anyway, they continued on with the Philadelphia experiment. And that rang the earth on a 20-year cycle. So every 20 years, this whole thing opens up so they can look at the timelines and stuff. Yeah. And in '63, they were looking for a way to change the timeline. So they were sending kids back in time and then bringing them forward. But you can't step into the same river twice, because it's flowing downstream. So that didn't work. And they also decided they needed to do some enhancements to enhance psychic abilities in people. And so you have all the psychoelectronics being invented in the 60s to the 70s. And they did a lot of work on frequencies, and you just name, anything you can think of was being funded. So the Montauk Project was in 83. In 2003, that's the 20 year from 83.
Yeah.
They ran the project again. And in 2003, they were looking for a fascist United States, a fascist North America, and a fascist world. And those were the timelines that they were looking for. And instead of taking someone out of this timeline and putting them in that timeline, what they were doing is they're looking at the timeline, finding a focal point, and killing that person off. So I was driving down the roads. Minneapolis is a fairly good sized city, and we have, areas of the city that have 5 and 6 lanes in them. And I was in the far right-hand lane of a 6-lane area. And as I'm driving, all these black lines go in front of me. So I know someone was fucking with the timelines. And, you'd have a black line, and then you'd see the timeline, black line, a timeline, black type of deal. And so the black line stopped, and I had been in heavy traffic where I couldn't consider merging to the left.
No.
And now I'm in light traffic, and I'm in the far left-hand lane. So I went over all the lanes of traffic during those switches, and I'm going like, where did that come from?
Yeah.
And it was getting annoying at that time. So I got a group of other people that I knew had some psychic ability. We had 2 fellows remote viewing to make sure that we were seeing what the targets was. The Montauk chair had been moved to New Jersey. And so they were running the same equipment then, basically. And one of the fellows, I had taught how to fix or disrupt electronic circuits. Okay. And so we traced the power from the chair back to the hydroelectric plant. And he went through all the breakers and wired them so that the energy could flow backwards through the breakers and blow them out. And then another fellow pulled some earth energy and sent it to me. And then I pushed it from the chair all the way back to the power supply, the dam, and blew all the circuits out. The part of the East Coast went dark, and they couldn't figure out why the circuit breakers didn't stop it from going all the way back to the dam. And that was in the news in August of 2003.
Yeah.
And it was also on the evening news here. So, sometimes you can see things you don't want to see. You can do things that are kind of strange if you know what you're doing. But it takes a lot out of you, and you see the whole world differently than everyone else does. So you don't have anyone you can talk to about it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, this is it. Because people think you're crazy because you're telling them, about your reality.
Yeah.
Which it isn't everybody else's reality,
Yeah, I know.
One of the things you were talking about there, which I've had happen to me, I don't know whether you've had it happen to yourself, but it's like when you were, it's like being able to teleport.
Oh, yeah.
The teleportation part of things.
When I had been in basic training, Um, I had the dose of LSD and peyote, and because I had freaked, I had seen a reptilian on base, and we had no explosives, nothing that we could do anything with. And so I made an IED. And I came to with it in my hands. Excuse me, I'm reading this.
Yeah, basically, it's
Okay.
about the effects, the physical effects of all this on the body, which we were just talking about before we came on. Anyway,
Yeah.
we'll carry
Anyway,
on with this.
so anyway, the I went. They took me to uh, a very secure building, shall we say?
Yeah.
It had 10-foot high fences with 3 layers of fencing and razor wire like this on the outside ones, and on the inside one it was straight up. And that's when they asked me whether I wanted to go home or wanted to stay in the service, and I said go home. And so they sent me to a different barracks, and at that time I weighed about 105 pounds, and I'm 6'3", and you could see every muscle, every tendon in my body, and where the bones were and stuff like that. And so they wouldn't let me go home without my gaining weight. And I got my first paycheck from the service, and they assigned a person to watch me. And I had never, during my time in basic training, I had never been to the base exchange. Other people had, but I hadn't. And so the guy went with me, and we went down to the base exchange, and I saw some books and picked them up, and went and paid for them. And I remember part of the walk back, but not the whole walk back. And he came back about an hour after I did. He said, he just fucking vanished in front of me. He disappeared. I don't know how he did it. And I said, I didn't disappear. I walked back. You saw me. I turned and I walked back. You know, I'm sure you saw me. And you just didn't want to talk to me. And so the next day, I had 2 best buddies assigned to me instead of 1. And these 2 guys, I liked to bowl. My wife liked to bowl, likes to bowl. And they had a 96 lane bowling alley. And I thought, well, that would be something to see. And so we walked down to the recreational center. The bowling alley was being repaired, so nothing could be done there. I shot a game of pool and I went back to the barracks. I don't remember how I got back. I just went back to the barracks. And it was about an hour and a half later, the 2 guys came in and talked to the person on duty. Says, he just disappeared in front of us. We couldn't find him. And we looked everywhere. And I said, well, he's been here for about an hour and a half. And I'm going, and during all this time, I'm on 50 milligrams of Valium 5 times a day to slow me down. Okay.
Wow.
And, that's enough to knock out a horse. And so the next day, I've got 4 guys assigned to me. Okay. They're deciding how they're going to watch me, right? And I thought, well, I'm gaining weight. I'm up to 115 pounds. I'll be going home soon, and maybe I should say goodbye to my DI. So I knock on his door, and he says, "Come." He sees me, he blanches white, and he says, "Do you know that there's a base wide alert for you?" No. "I got to call and tell him I found you. Stay right there." So I'm standing there, I'm going like, what the hell's going on? And he says, "How did you get past the guards at the gate?" And I said, "Guards? Gate? I walked? I don't know. You know, I didn't see any guards." And so as we're going out, uh, there's razor wire around the barracks that we came out of. And there's a couple guards at the gate, and I'm going like, "Oh, there's guards at the gate." you know, that was kind of weird. I don't remember seeing any guards there. And he walked me back to the other barracks, and the next morning there were 4 MPs there.
Wow.
And 2 MPs held on to me at all times, had a hand on me at all times. And one went back and packed up my things, and I said, "You want me to come back and help with that?" "No." And they gave the other one was helping. The fourth one was helping him, and they had me sign paperwork. And I noticed on the paperwork that I was signing when I was being released that I had reached the rank of E7, which is a master sergeant. And the paperwork I had originally signed to get into the Air Force was for 4 years, and this paperwork was signed for 6 years. So that kind of had me puzzled as to how that happened. And my signatures match as close as it can be. And so they threw my duffel bag into the trunk. They walked me down to the car that was waiting, threw my duffel bag into the trunk. The 2 guys that were holding on to me held on to me all the way into the car, which was kind of weird. And the guy that threw it into the trunk went into the passenger seat. The other guy drove. They took me to the airport. And the guy with the car stayed with the car. The guy that was a passenger pulled my duffel bag out and went to the airline desk and got a ticket for me to come home. The 2 guys still held on to me. They walked me up to the gate. The guy with the ticket presented the ticket. The 2 guys walked me onto the plane and sent me in first class. I think I was about the only person there. And just they stayed in the doorway until the plane was fully loaded. And when the plane was fully loaded and ready to taxi to take off, they left. And I think I weighed in that morning at about 125, 120 or 125.
So on the airline, was it a civilian airline or was it?
Yeah, it was a commercial airline.
Right.
And it was just kind of a strange experience. The stewardess offered me any drinks I wanted. I don't drink alcohol.
No.
So I asked for 7-Up, which is a type of pop with lime and lemonade type of thing. And flew into the Minneapolis International Airport, and then flew from Minneapolis International Airport to the Fargo Airport. And my mom picked me up.
So was you married at this time?
Huh?
Was you married at this point when he'd come out?
Not yet. I got married after I got home.
Right.
We went on our honeymoon, and she had her first migraine headache while I was driving the car. Well, sinus headache. she's kibbutzing over here on the side. And so I was we're going up the north shore of Lake Superior, and I was taking photos of the streams and the waterfalls and all that kind of stuff. And we had taken her twin sister, because it was a double wedding, and her husband to Minneapolis on the drive. We stayed at Jan and I stayed at my folks' camper on a lake for our honeymoon. And we got back, and my best man told me that military police had been by, military intelligence had been by and interviewed him as to me. And I went and saw Mom to return the car. And Mom informed me that my parents had received a letter from the military saying that I was MIA in Vietnam, which was the cover story for what I was supposed to be doing.
Wow.
So,
that is amazing. That's amazing.
So yeah, it's a different experience. And being in space with the aliens was a different experience. The room that they had me in made a monk's cell look luxurious by comparison. There was a platform that was used for sitting and for a bed that was built into the floor and the walls of the room. There were no windows in there. The interesting thing about the room was that the walls changed colors to represent the different time of day and night and different activities that I was supposed to be doing. So I was isolated most of the time I was with them. The hallways of the vehicles and stuff were, I don't know if you remember the dark room, the lights they used to use in dark rooms back in the 60s and 70s for developing film.
Oh yeah,
the red lights. So that's basically the way the ship was lit, with those red lights on it, so that you could keep your night vision. So.
And so you was in, what type of craft was it? What you was in? What type of craft was the craft that you was in as a, like a pilot, or, well, not pilot, as an astronaut?
I wasn't an astronaut per se. I was just a technician doing technical things. I mean,
but it was in outer space in a spacecraft.
Yeah, we were in space. We were in space, but it was, some of the crafts they had were so big you might as well consider them small planets, and you're on the inside. And being out in space was because the ship jumped and I didn't. And then they told me, they put a block on and said, no, you don't need to go home. They took samples of my tissues. I think they used it for cloning, and in case something happened to me,
Yeah.
Which did. We were on every planet that we went to, they called it Mars, but I may have been misunderstanding that as ours. And we were cleaning up. I was cleaning up after a battle. We were picking up all the corpses and body parts and scat, all the shit that was there, just cleaning everything up. And I don't know what they're doing with it, but one of the combatants was still alive. And I was running and I took a plasma burst in the side and then blacked out. Apparently I was rescued, and I was laying on something that was a metal table. I was wrapped in one of those foil sheets that reflects your heat back onto you. And there were a couple of beer kegs that were working on, with little arms and stuff coming out, that were working on my side where I had been hit. And the arms were busily laying down blood vessels and nerves and and all that stuff, skin and whatever, which I thought was kind of weird. You know, the alien holding my head wanted me to watch this going on, you know, because he was
Really?
blocking the pain and stuff that I was in. And after they were just about done, he let go of my head and I was out. And
So, who was the battle with? You know, sort of who had you been fighting?
you know, did you know that a T-Rex has feathers?
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, they have feathers. Dark black, blue, iridescent feathers. They're about 7 foot tall. The ones that I saw, anyway.
Oh.
I had been working on a before the battle. I had been working on a power unit. I had to replace a power unit. It was for the force field at the gate, and they had about 4 guys there, and they had, you know, light armament, and all it is you loosen 2 thumb screws. The unit will pull back, but it's still connected. And it's basically 2 inches thick and 9 inches by 12 inches. And you pull one out, you put another one back in, push it back, tighten up the thumb screws. And in that time, the T-Rex came through the front gate, took out 4 men. And then the guys behind it had something. The closest I can think of is like a rail gun.
Yeah.
That's rapid fire, a machine rail gun type of deal. And took it down. And so that was kind of, you know, I'd taken too long, apparently, and it got through. And I don't know why they didn't have redundant circuits. I mean, all of our fiber networks are on redundant self-healing circuits, and I don't know why they didn't do something like that with a critical system like that. But
And where did this where did this T-Rex come?
supposedly Mars.
Yeah.
Like I said,
Did it come into your? Was this on Earth? Did it come to Earth, or where was you when this came through, or was it on the ship?
this wasn't a ship. We're in an underground base on Mars.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Well, I know
When
what
it
you're
was,
saying
I
there.
couldn't tell you. You know,
It's funny because one of the things what I've had happen to me, and I've said to people that when I've been taken and we'd gone to different planets because there'd been a mission
yeah,
to different planets. All the planets in the universe are all inhabited. No
basically,
matter
yeah,
no matter how it sounds, how cold or how hot the planet is, they're all inhabited by creatures. Some look human, some look half human, some look like ice,
hmm
like you could say like very similar to a human but ice form, and some will look like somebody on fire, like
yeah,
flames, a little bit like these superheroes.
yeah.
And people say, "Oh, don't be silly," and I'm saying, I'm telling you, from the moon, to Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, they're all have life force, different forms of life living there. And sort of like I get people saying, "No, no, you're talking silly." I'm saying, "Well, that's what I've come across personally. You can't see it maybe from telescopes looking at the moon. There's a lot going on. There's a lot underground, same as like on Mars. you know, just because you can't see doesn't mean that it's not there.
Yeah, our vision and our senses are very limited, and that's part of the problem we have. And doing something like you or I were doing,
Yeah,
they work to enhance your senses.
this is it.
I don't know if you've ever had a sleep study for like sleep apnea, but I did one of those. And the problem was that they had this huge, bright red spotlight on me the whole frickin' night. I couldn't see because of this. I couldn't sleep because of this bright light that they had on me. And then they told me, well, that's in the infrared range and you're not supposed to see that.
I haven't had that happen. No, I haven't had it happen. Not when I was taken. I was told I may have sleep apnea by a doctor because I had all sorts of problems breathing and getting to sleep on a night afterwards.
Yeah, afterwards I'll send you some tips on some of that stuff.
You know, like when you just can't breathe and you're choking.
Yep.
And there's nothing you can do, and you can't get to sleep. You're struggling. You're from one to another, and you wear yourself out, and you're so tired. You go to bed at 12 o'clock. By eight in the morning, you're just, you know, sort of like turning around and jumping around and from one side to another, not sleeping till 8 o'clock. Time to get up comes, and you're so tired that you fall asleep when it's time to get up. It's crazy.
Well, it's gotten to the point where I'll stay up. Now, one of the other things, I came back when we were doing the Montauk project. My programming partner, I got kicked out of college for bringing down something called DARPANET, which is the predecessor of the internet that we have today. And that brought down Strategic Air Command and Cheyenne Mountain, banks and military bases and research centers and colleges.
You will be
popular. And it was an assigned project. And so I got kicked out of college with my programming partner, and our instructor was deported.
Wow.
But I had done that anyway. My programming partner, and I was down for. He lived in the cities down here in the Twin Cities, and I was really tired after one of the sessions. I don't know what I was doing in the session, but I was just exhausted. And I asked him if I could use his bed for an hour, because I had an hour before I had to leave town.
Yeah,
absolutely leave town. And I said I really could use 8 hours sleep, but I've only got an hour to do it in. And he had at the head of the bed, he had one of those synchronous digital clocks where the numbers just kind of flip, 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 flip. And so I laid down, and he said, as soon as your head hit the pillow, those numbers just start flipping like there was no tomorrow. And he said, I've got a crystal controlled digital watch on my hand, and I was sitting at the foot of the bed. And that was not giving the right time, because the clock over the door had a different time. When the clock over the door was an hour, you woke up, the clock at the head of the bed was at 8 hours, and the clock on my wrist was at 2. So that gives you an idea of the field, about 8 foot, and how it impacts.
Yeah.
And so I call that sleeping fast.
Yeah. You see, there's it's like when I was taken back I got basically caught by the enemy, and I
Oh,
was
I'm
taken.
sorry. Were they
Yeah.
reptilians?
No, no, they were
Okay.
humans. They were humans, and I could have killed one of their men, and I didn't. I'd said to my team, I thought we was not supposed to be on a planet where there was human beings. I said, this is a human being. I've got a gun pointed at him, and his gun had jammed, and I didn't shoot him. And I turned back and I said, I thought we were not supposed to be in contact with humans. And then he shot me in the back.
Yeah.
I could have shot him. He shot me in the back. I stumbled and went back. My own team member shot me with a sound blast gun. So in the same place where I'd just been shot with like a 303 round, and sort of like, so I'm on the ground with my helmet half off with a bust eardrum because I'm trying to say, can't you hear what I'm saying? They legged it and left me with this group who took me as prisoner. They brought me back to the planet where we'd been on originally and left me there. So then my team came back because, the suit tells them where you are at all
Yeah.
times.
Yeah.
Apart from when they took me to their planet back on Earth,
Hmm.
and then dropped me back on this other planet where we'd been originally. And so the problem is, what it is that I feel that there's a lot of problems because of I'd been taken back, but because they hadn't put me there originally, but taken me off of there by
Hmm.
their technology, which is slightly different to the technology that put me there. Because
Yep.
they put me back there, took me and put me back there, I feel that I am out of sync. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it does.
I have this great feeling that since that happened, um, you know, I'm I'm out of sync, and I've never been the same since that happened. You know,
Yeah. Can I answer a few of these questions that I got
yeah, of
here?
course you can, yeah,
Uh, Something every human can learn. Yes, it is something every human can learn. Uh,
so,
the rest of the session of what happens when someone dies when they're remote viewing. Um, okay, I'm going to tell a story, and it's something they told about the Philadelphia experiment,
yeah,
and they talked about people in the VA having these belts that had coils around them that were running a frequency. And if the batteries died and they didn't change it with someone there, the guys would get a strange look on their face and they'd be looking into a different reality. And they were up on the fourth floor of the VA hospital at the time. And they
when
would,
you say VA, what do you mean VA?
Veterans Administration hospitals.
Right, I see.
Okay. I'm sorry, it's an American thing.
Yeah,
And they get this strange look on their face, walk through the solid wall, and never be seen again. Okay. There are so many other sessions, multiple, you want to call it a holographic multiple universe type thing.
yeah.
That's kind of like it is. So you lose your connection, you go on to the next one. Okay. Let's see here. Try and get down here. Oh, I got a whole lot of them here. I'm sorry.
There is, yeah.
Uh, aliens are more involved than most people think. There are human experiments where they're trying to do things, and there are alien experiments, both. The group I was with considered human beings an experiment, and we're an experiment because we're made up of multiple races. A fellow by the name of John Salk, who was a professor of the University of North Dakota, and also he was part native, had been abducted while he was in a fire tower over a forest area in, I think it was New Mexico, he said. And the aliens were wondering how, the aliens that abducted him were wondering how to interbreed and mixed races. And that was part of the reason they abducted him and studied him. And when I met him, he came by and told me, "You've been in space. You've been with aliens. I know that. I can tell that from you." And I was going like, "How could you tell that?" "You've been with extraterrestrials." And I said, "Well, I can't really say that I've been with extraterrestrials, NDA, but I have been with extraterrestrials. And a number of these races believe that they came from this earth and it should be theirs." There was a Doctor Who episode out. I don't know if you're a Doctor Who fan or not.
Yeah.
And it was called The Hungry Earth, I think it was. And in there, they had an alien race that they called Solarians.
Yeah.
And to me, they were dead ringers for what I knew as Lyrians. And they believe that the earth should be theirs. And they live underground and stuff like that. And I was just kind of like, oh my God, where are they getting this shit from? That is too damn close.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's been many films where very similar, suggestions of aliens living, underground have come about,
Yeah.
It's a possibility because of all the underground bases. I mean, we had an incident here in the UK when we was making when the engineers were tunneling from England over to France using the tunneling machine to take it underneath, to put the big road system and the rail system underground, 20 odd miles, and so the actual drill bit that they used broke, and they had to pull it out. So they said there's only one company that makes these, and they took it out, and people could see it on television. They brought it out, and they said, right, they brought the new one, and they said there's only them that sort of like use this this type of drill, and they brought the new one in place, and you'll never guess what? It wasn't the same.
Yeah.
It was a lot bigger, right? And they said that, well, if it's double the size of the one, and they said they brought the wrong one. And someone said, well, what have they used? If they've used that, where have they used it? And what have they used it for? And it were like, oh, sort of like we shouldn't have told anybody about this. This was something was secret because nobody knew, that they must have had somewhere on this planet, they must be using this bigger drill, like to make an underground base or whatever, to make the actual sort of like lanes and what have you to link them all up. So that's a very strange thing. And I mean, like, this is massive. You get vehicles, sort of like side by side, and a train and people walking lanes. So somewhere along, it tells you that they're using this technology. So there must be underground bases.
In the late 1990s, I was working for a company called Quest, which was a telecom company, and they provided fiber optic service and telecom service, internet,
Yeah.
you name it. Anyway, I got a call from this fellow because I was known for my ability to work with fiber remotely. And he said that they had a Hyperloop train and they're having problems with the self-healing fiber network for controlling the maglev. And so I did a little programming of it to reprogram it so that it worked better. And they said that it ran between Denver and it ran to Grand Junction, Colorado, both Colorado. And that's the section that I was working on. And that was fiber optics. And he said it travels at over 400 miles per hour. The train itself will travel at over 400 miles per hour underneath the ground. And no one knows that it's there. And it's deep underground, and I mean deep. So they talk about DUMBs or the underground bases. Yeah, they're there.
Oh, yeah.
And where they're driving these trains through, those are big big tunnels. I never saw them other than remotely. And they're big.
So the big, what are they used for?
They're used for transporting materials
What type of materials?
and foreign technology.
Pardon?
Foreign technology.
As
Foreign
in
technology is a buzzword for flying saucers.
Yeah. So the thing is, you see, this is something, and this might come into it. See what you think, right? Yeah. Because this year we've got the new figures in my country for how many people have gone missing in a year, right?
Okay.
And I spoke about this 10 years ago on the BBC radio show.
Uh-huh.
And it was 160,000 people a year in the United Kingdom had gone missing.
Mm-hmm.
This year, the statistics came out to say that there is 350,000 people go missing a year in the United Kingdom. So in 10 years, it's more than doubled.
Yeah.
They're only fined 1,000 of the people that have gone missing. When they look back and when they move on, there's only ever 1,000 of the people out of those statistics ever found, right?
Yeah.
So that is nearly going on 500,000, going on for nearly 500,000 a year. Where are all these people going?
It's hard to say. There's a lot of different possibilities as to where they could be going.
Well, I know for certain that we spoke about Eisenhower before, didn't we?
Yep.
To say that there was an exchange, and that was technology for humans that had
Yeah.
been abducted.
Well,
So, is that still in progress today?
the Vietnam War was a nice place to lose people.
Yeah. Any war is.
And so they're listed as missing in action.
Yeah.
And, they told me I would, when I was going for this other position, when they wanted me to go to this other position, they said, well, you're going to go to California language school and learn this language, and then you're
Yeah.
going to go to the base at Lagrange Point 5, and whenever a blip appears on the screen, you put the crosshairs on it and translate. Well, that's the waterfall technology that the ham radio operators are using today. And you'd spend 2 months at the base at L5, and then you'd be returned to Earth in the Alice Springs area of Australia. And you'd have to spend your R&R in Australia, Japan, or New Zealand. And your 2 weeks of R&R was so that you could recover from being in space for 2 months. The ship that we had made and placed at L5 with the aliens, the Navy outfitted, U.S. Navy, and so we gave them an 80-foot diameter, about 3-story curling stone like vehicle that glowed orange. And the SR-71 pilots in the 70s would fly out of Hawaii, and they tail hook 55-gallon drums of film and documents that were parachuted down to the Earth from the upper atmosphere. And if they didn't make their turn quick enough, they'd fly over Australia and they'd see this thing coming up, this curling stone, 80-foot diameter. And when they were at full throttle, it would make them feel like they were standing still.
Wow.
Thomas Townshend Brown, back in the 30s and 40s, early 40s, did an experiment with a disc-shaped device, and he used electrostatics on the original one. And within an atmosphere, it achieved a speed of 4,000 miles per hour. And it was about 2.5 foot in diameter type of thing, 2.5 to 3 foot. And in an atmosphere, he said, in a vacuum, he said it would go much, much faster.
Wow.
The technology is out there.
Yeah.
A fellow by the name of
Is that? Did you travel in that? Did you say?
I have no memory. Well, I have no memory of traveling in that because I was given the LSD peyote dose before I got that assignment. But they told me that they would have me listed as missing in action. No contact with any of my family members or anyone I knew, and basically isolated and keep secrets, and they wanted to keep me for 20 years.
So going back to this Eisenhower thing and the exchange of what you would call technology for human beings.
Yeah.
It has been said that one of the things what they use the human beings for is food.
Yes.
And slaves.
Yes.
Now, I've come across slaves, abductees, people had been abducted as slaves in an underground base, and I could not believe my eyes. You know, the
Yeah,
people
I
that
know.
had been taken and in very, very poor state of affairs.
Yep.
You know, not very well looked after. You know, basically being, as a word,
I run tech support on.
slaves.
I ran tech support on a couple of those rescues.
Right. And
The
terrible.
other thing that really bothered me was preteen and teen, young teen
Yeah.
kids that they would keep in these boxes and scare the shit out of them. And they'd have something tapped into their brain and they'd draw that fluid out from the fear.
Mm. Yeah.
And the reptilians would use that like an aphrodisiac.
That's right. Yeah, like a drug. Yeah.
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 So, anyway, I had something else here. I wanted to know why they are showing themselves as orbs to regular Joes like me. Well, the orbs are not necessarily them. One of the things that was done with the portal technology after the Montauk project
Yeah.
is with that you tell at one end, which is your origin point, and the
Yeah.
other end is to where you want to go,
Yeah.
and you can control the size of that where you want to go. And sometimes that'll appear as an orb, and that can be directed around, and follow you
Yeah.
all over the place if they wanted to.
We have
And
something similar. It's like the 3 points. It's where you are, beginning and end. It's called triangulation.
yeah, yeah, that original portal that they did was something similar. It reminded me of the TV show Sliders and how they opened up a tear in time and you slid through it. And the they were using that for monitoring. And now, while you and I can't always see the orb, I was out at a friend's farm and he had guinea hens, and the guinea hens could see where they placed the orb. And then
Yeah.
we'd move, and they'd move the orb, and the guinea hens would move and be
Yeah.
squawking at that orb in the sky because it was a danger symbol to them. So
Right.
it was real. And the
I know
dogs
what
would,
you're saying. But we've I used to do this game with a friend because we'd been watching this program about not orbs as such, but it was about, you must have heard of the name of rods or skyfish. Rods and skyfish.
doesn't ring a bell.
Rods that you can capture them on video, and it's a long, like, insect, and it
Oh,
looks a
okay.
little bit, and they call them rods, and they move at terrific speeds, and sometimes they can be up to 50 foot long and even longer. So
Okay.
we set up a camera and we could see these, right, where people don't see them usually. And
Yeah.
what we do, we call it the clock. And you look at it as if you're looking at a clock. And when you see a rod moving, if it moves from top to bottom, that'd be 12 to 6. If
Okay.
it moves from 9 to 3, so when we see them moving, we'd go like, say, for instance, like that, and it'd
Hmm.
be 11 to 8. Or if it
Hmm.
were, say, like that, it'd be
Hmm.
1 to 6, 1 to 7 sort of thing. So and then what we'd do is we'd film. So we'd film this and then we'd rewind it. And when we saw the orb, you can hear us both talking, me and Joe, and we'd be saying, 12, 6, 9, 3, 1, 7. And when you look, you could see every time. And it's something that we can do with orbs. We can also do with orbs.
Yeah.
Usually, when with orbs, it's a little bit different. We don't have to change anything on this camera, but when you're dealing with orbs, you usually have to have infrared mode on.
I'm gonna try and bring up PowerPoint here.
Right.
We'll see if that works.
Yeah, it should do. If you just click presentation, present.
Yeah. Okay. From my computer.
Yeah.
Okay. It wants me to upload.
Right.
We current support. Okay. Upload file. It'll take me a minute to get there.
Yeah, no problem. No problem.
And I gotta expand this. Let's see, is it this one? Oh, sorry. Looking at the wrong one. What about this one? PowerPoint. This one. Okay, where did it go? Oh, it's loading. Okay, sorry. I'm used to Zoom and it's usually there right away.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Just bear with
me. Can you see that, or do I have to do something else?
Yeah. Let me have a look here. Just if I click on it, it should bring it up.
There we go.
Yeah.
This was
lab rat.
Yeah, that's basically what I'm writing down, because basically when you're a lab rat, you don't know what's going on until afterwards.
That's right, yeah.
You're kept in the dust, you're kept in the dark and fed bullshit. There's basically 3 methods of remote viewing, and one is the Russell Targ put off method, and that works pretty good. And you're basically playing a game with your imagination. Then the brainwave entrainment method, and then the military method, where they use brainwave entrainment and they have a viewer and they're using the jumping radar, which is the same as your weather radar today. And they have someone as a controller directing the session. And with the military one, they also have someone monitoring your brainwaves and your heart and lungs and all that stuff at the same time. These are some of the things you can do.
Space and time.
You can view any location in space-time and communicate with other beings anywhere. Remote view, hear, feel. You can astral travel. You can even haunt your own timeline.
Yeah.
Which I've done by accident, and kind of frustrated me first. And then we had someone living with us, and I was looking for a book, and I'm concerned about it. And I was asleep in my chair. She ran into me and down in my library. She was going to the bathroom in the middle of the night. You can place thoughts in other people's minds, telekinesis and manifestation, and teleportation.
Yeah.
And the teleportation is what we wanted to get to.
Yeah.
This document here that people are seeing, I don't know if you can see this.
Physics study.
Yeah. It was released in 2004, and they say it was published in 2003. But Eric Dollard worked on some of the equipment back in the 60s when he was verifying that it was still valid to use.
Yeah.
And the form that you see on Star Trek, that doesn't work. Quantum mechanic, quantum entanglement is basically just good for teleportation, telecommunications. A vacuum of space-time is kind of tapping 0-point energy. And I can tell about an experiment we did with that before. And then, of course, changing timelines is what I was trying to do with the Montauk project, which you can never step into the same river twice. So it doesn't really work quite the way they think it is. And psychic means is actually the best form of teleportation. It uses the least amount of energy and stuff. But if you didn't want to do teleportation and that's gateway experience that I went through. And if you didn't want to do it that way, if you wanted to do it some other way where you're actually physically opening a gate from one point to another point, right here is the formula for it. There's the math for how to do it.
Wow.
Okay.
That's amazing.
I've done a lot of research to try and find these things. And the thing is, most of this research finds me rather than me finding it.
Right.
And a friend of mine found this for me. Found this as he was looking at something else, and he said, "Oh, Joe might be interested in this," and sent it to me. And then I talk about the 10 years of monitoring. We covered that already. That's what the Fargo VA looks like. My gateway experience, what we went through, and then the Minneapolis Veterans VA. This building gives me PTSD, and I have to go there for medical care. And then I talked about my Montauk already.
Yeah.
And let's see, talked about Project Rainbow. Now here's the next section that I wanted to cover for you today. And this is an executive summary on mind control that I did for someone. And this is just a quick outtake of it. And I mentioned the Manchurian Candidate, that was 1962. Hallucinogens like LSD and peyote and psychoelectronics were used in 1963. Robert Moore did a series of tapes from the 60s through the 70s. And the Stockholm Syndrome, is a type of mind control. Weaponized mind control can trigger different effects. And these are some of the different things that it can trigger. And if you're experiencing them, go to a doctor first and rule out any medical issues before you immediately jump to the concept of mind control. Like with UFOs and MUFON's identification of UFOs, you have to rule out anything else first. So it's decided by a process of elimination. There's different delivery methods that they can do the mind control: chemical,
touch, vibration, audio.
Yeah,
sound.
Silent sound is an interesting one. You just hear consciously, you hear white noise, but they can frequency modulate the human voice, and you can hear someone talking to you.
Yeah.
Okay. You take that a step further to the ultrasound method. You have the voice of God. And this was used in the Iraqi war when all the Iraqis suddenly gave up. They'd use the voice of God on them. GWEN, Ground Wave Emergency Network, was developed in the 60s to the 70s. They wanted a way to communicate with people underground when they were in fallout shelters because of the incident in Havana during the Kennedy administration. And so they came up with GWEN. And they test GWEN because it's using one of the magic window frequencies that go directly into your brain. And you use frequency modulation for all of this stuff. They test it by making people angry and hostile. And if the crime rate in an area goes up, then they know it's working.
Wow.
And they were using this, and my friend is a farmer, and he has animals, and his animals were getting all pissy and picking on each other and all this kind of stuff. So I took one of my earth generators that I'd done and put it in a nodal point in one of the ley lines, and powered the generator up. The animals were all fine. and happy and content to be there anymore. So it stopped all the anger and viciousness that they had.
Wow.
Uh,
It's amazing.
yeah, I was researching power from the air at that time. And then, of course, you can use light.
Yeah.
There's the basic brainwave frequencies. If you want to look up more frequencies, you can go online and look up the consolidated annotated frequency list. And I prefer the one that's electroherbalism. But there's several lists out there, and they'll present you with a lot of healing frequencies that you can use. And that's pretty much it.
And how do you, when you said you were talking about healing frequencies to me, how do you get them? How do you hear them, for instance?
There are different ways. When I was killing the bacteria that causes fibromyalgia,
Yeah.
I was using a frequency generator, and I think the frequency was 360 kilohertz, which is a radio frequency. And I was using it with handholds to run through my body. And I'm not running a high power levels. I had the generators set for -4 volts to 5 volts, or to positive
And
4
can
volts.
you buy these? How can you buy one of these generators to use if
They're
you've
about
got...
They're about $120, and they're shipped out of China.
Right.
And
If you've got any information about these, after, I'll give you my email address, because I have the same thing myself. I've had it now for 30 years. And
the generator I use for the fibromyalgia,
yeah,
I could set the pulse width on it. So I set the pulse width to 20% duty cycle. And because of the way this bacteria procreates,
but how did we get this?
how do we get the bacteria?
Yeah, where the heck did it come from? From outer space, because we've been taken? Have we been, because we've been close to an alien? Is it like a virus? Has it been given to us by accident?
You've heard of Lyme disease and the deer ticks?
Yeah.
The deer ticks carry it.
Right.
I used to do a lot of camping, and I had a bullseye bite on my leg, a couple
Yeah.
of them, when I was young. And this being out in space stuff just kind of triggered everything. The auto accident actually triggered more of it than anything else. And that
But
was
would you say is it more earthbound, or is it definitely alien in origin?
well, I'm going to say it's earthbound because of one thing. When I was doing my research on power from the air, I found out that our atmosphere will resonate at a frequency, our atmosphere and Earth together, excuse me, will resonate at a frequency, a center frequency of 375 kHz. And that's plus or minus 50 kHz. So it'll sweep from 325 to 425 kHz. And in that frequency, you will find most of the viruses, most of the bacteria that people have problems with. So you'll find you have H. priority or ulcers. That bacteria that causes that, H. priority, is in there. What they call C. diff is a diarrhea that can kill you.
Right.
And the bacteria that causes that is in there, and you can kill it. I was recovering in a nursing home, and I had fractured my thigh bone just below my hip ball socket. And the whole wing I was in had C. diff. And I didn't get it. And I didn't get it is because every time I felt like I was going to have diarrhea, I ran the kill frequency for C. diff. The nurses were having to be out sick. Everyone was having to be out sick, but I didn't get it.
No.
We lost 3 or 4 people in the wing, but what I was doing is illegal in the US. So technically I was doing something that for myself only. So from that standpoint, I could do it for myself, but I couldn't do it for anyone else.
Wow.
So yeah, there's just a cytomegalovirus, RSV, Epstein-Barr, all the arthritis, they're all in there, in that range. And if the Earth and its atmosphere were working properly, we probably wouldn't be experiencing any of those. The other thing is when I put up the antenna wire and did my experiments to see what the frequency was, my neighbor had cut off his trees, and it was about 6 to 8 foot away where I set up my antenna wire.
Yeah.
And he had cut off the trees at the property line. And in the course of 1 month, that tree grew to short out my wire.
Wow.
And so I thought, well, that was kind of interesting. So I told my dad. He told one of his friends, and his friend told the microbiologist. So they came to see what I was doing. The microbiologist had been experimenting with these nodal points and ley lines and stuff for his planting his fields. And he was following something Victor Schauenberger had written about in The Living Water. And it's best to get the British version first edition than any of the other ones because they've all been modified since. And so anyway, he had chemically analyzed, he found these little nodules that were little eggs, and the microorganisms had formed this nodule of material, this egg, so that it would resonate at the nodal. It would be at the nodal point about 6 inches under the ground. It would resonate at about 375 kilohertz. And so he had balanced chemically his soil in his field, which was 66 by 33, so that it framed the little points. And he had balanced the soil to that 375 kilohertz. And 375 kilohertz was the center frequency that I had found. And so he took me out there and he said, well, he was at the seedling stage. Now, this was at the end of May. Okay.
Yeah.
So the plants were just little seedlings. The insects were munching down on them, And he said, well, is there anything we can do to intensify that field, that energy field? I said, I don't know. We could acupuncture it. You got anything to use as acupuncture needles? And he said, well, I'm planning on replumbing the house, and I've got some 3/4 inch copper pipe that's 10 foot long over there to use for plumbing. And I said, okay, well, let's take those. So we put one of those pipes over each one of those nodal points. And that 10-foot pipe just stood straight up right there over the nodal point. And Jim calls me the 1st of July and he says, so a microbiologist. He says, Joe, you got to come out and help me harvest my crop. And I said, sure. August, September, no problem. I mean, it's the 1st of July. Your corn isn't even knee high. He said, no, you got to come out and harvest my crop. And you ruin my cash crop. And I'm going like, what the hell is he talking about? You can't even have a crop yet. It's got to be just maybe 6 inches to a foot tall.
Yeah.
And he said, no, you got to come out today and help me harvest my crop. Yeah, okay. I'll come out and help you, Jim. We get out there. His cash crop was Indian corn, and Indian corn is about 6 inches long and about yay big. diameter, just thing, multicolored corn. And his Indian corn was 18 inches long and 3 inches in diameter.
Wow.
On the ears. And we're talking 1 month, he companion planted with the Indian corn carrots. And he planted 6-inch carrots because they would fit in the mason jars that he had for canning, and he didn't have to do anything with them. The carrots were the same size as the Indian corn.
Wow.
And so I thought, well, that's wild. His iceberg lettuce, the heads are usually about this big in the store. They're the size of basketballs. And his cabbage heads were the size of basketballs.
Wow.
He had more tomatoes coming out of his ears than he knew what to do with. And he had beans and peas. He'd never had such a bumper crop before.
That is amazing.
Well, that's what happens when you've got the right frequency and it's sweeping that range. So I said, is it because it's sweeping the range, or is it because it's set a sweep frequency?
Yeah.
So we had moved out. By that time, we had moved to the Twin Cities, a suburb called Brooklyn Park. And the soil is sand here, and you got maybe half an inch of dirt. And so dug it up, took the grass off, and planted some tomatoes and some radishes, and the neighbor kids planted a few confectionery sunflower seeds. And the confectionery sunflowers are supposed to be about 6 foot tall and have a 6-inch head on them. And they grew to 12 to 14 foot tall, and they had 12 to 14 inches heads of sunflower seeds on them. The little radishes are supposed to be about this big, and they're about this big. And people who had the radish sandwiches, I don't eat radishes, but people who had them said that they tasted like the best radishes they've ever tasted. And tomatoes, my wife likes the little grape tomatoes,
Oh, yeah.
And I wanted a beefsteak tomato, so we had a couple of little tomatoes and a beefsteak tomato plant. And most of the tomatoes came out the size of beefsteaks. So it activated the genes so that they grew to the larger size. So
flipping heck, that's amazing.
So yeah, it's before the auto accident, I did a lot of crap. One last thing about the Montauk project. They had us looking into the future. One of the future timelines we looked at, someone told me was like year 3300. And there was a statue of Bronco standing there.
Of who, sorry?
The horse standing up rearing up on its legs. In that time, at that end of time, and everything else was pretty much desolated. No crops, no nothing. And so I thought, well, that's in the distant future, and I'm not going to see anything like that in my lifetime,
So why had that happened? Did they say why?
They wanted us to look in the future, and so we just followed the timeline out.
No, but I mean, if that had happened in the future, what had caused that?
We don't know. We don't know. We don't know what caused it. I didn't look that deeply at it. So here, a couple of years ago, I'm looking around, and the Denver airport has this damn statue in front of it that we'd seen in the future.
And it's
so now I know so now I know where the location was, but back then I didn't have any idea where it was.
Is that the one which has got what is it? Post-apocalyptic pictures all over inside. It's got weird murals and what have you. Is that the one?
You didn't mean the Denver airport?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's got all kinds of stuff like that. It's rumored to have an underground base underneath
Underground
of it
base.
that connects somehow up to an alien base somewhere else.
Yeah, I've heard of this. Wow.
But
That is
as to whether it
absolutely
does, I can't
amazing.
verify that or not.
No,
You know,
no.
it's just
That is
rumor as far as I'm concerned.
absolutely amazing.
So,
It really is.
yeah, let's see. Let's see. Okay, I'm looking at that. Okay.
Explaining about the orbs. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Sandanro. You're quite welcome, my friend.
yeah.
I hope everybody's enjoying tonight's show. It's been one of the best shows that I've done for a long time.
Yeah. I
It's
hope they have too.
yeah, well, I can tell. Yeah, we've had quite a few people watching, and we're coming up now to nearly 2 hours.
Yeah.
So we've got about 4 minutes left, Joe.
Well, I want to
And
say that I've got about 2 gigabytes of background information on everything I've said.
wow, that's amazing. That's
So I
amazing.
can't upload it. I
No.
have a list of books for reading material.
Yeah.
Well, that's very huge.
Yeah. I am so
Uh,
interested in this machine, that'll
yeah,
basically get rid of
yeah.
fibromyalgia,
Send me your email and I'll send you the link and stuff. And it's a shame that I can't do it for you. Um, I'll even show you. I'll try and send you some pictures of it.
Right.
I've got 2 different types of machines that I use,
Yeah. And I
and
can buy them from China, did you say?
they're both out of China. Yeah, they're
Wow.
illegal they're illegal to use it for this in the U.S. unless you're
Well,
doing
I'm
it
not
on
in the
your own.
US, so it's okay.
I know that they're used in Europe.
Yeah.
One of the Rife machines is manufactured here in the Twin Cities, and it's sold to the doctors in Europe, and they use it over there. And from what I understand, they're supposed to have a 96% cure rate of all cancers and a 98% cure rate of AIDS cases.
Wow. That is
So,
amazing. That is amazing, Joe. It really
yeah.
is. Well, we'll have to have you back on the show talking about the actual the aliens and everything next time.
Yeah.
Or is there
Uh,
anything that you want to talk about next time? Anything you think
yeah, we can talk about that, but you probably won't get a whole lot out of me because I don't like talking about them. I still have night terrors from them,
right,
and I
yeah,
don't want to
well,
bring them up. I
I
mean,
can understand what you're saying there.
some of them make H.P. Lovecraft work look like Disney
Yeah, yeah. This is one of my
cartoons.
problems,
Yeah,
living with the reality of it, and
no one else can experience it.
no, it makes you feel sick when you're talking sometimes.
Yeah,
And sometimes when you remember, sometimes I have these things, like a flashback. And
yep,
if I have a flashback, I
yeah.
am sick all day. If I'm
It takes a day or 2 days to get over it.
just sick all day thinking about, and I can feel as if I were there still, and I'm screaming. It's like I'm screaming. Sort of like, and you just can't explain to people. They think well,
Yeah,
what's wrong with you?
I know exactly what you're talking about. Been there.
Unless you've lived it, it's hard to explain. So, Joe Swanson, thank you very much for coming on the show. It's been one of my favourite shows. It really has been, I must admit. And we'll have to have you back on again and, talking about whatever. you know, whatever you want to talk about, it's okay
Well,
with me.
if you're posting this on YouTube, there's a few people that I know that would like to see it. So
It's on. It's already on there.
okay,
As soon as we finish, you just got to go flying. So I'll send you the link. Flying Saucer Television. It's on me. If you go onto my Facebook and
okay,
the UFO Paranormal TV group,
okay,
you click on join. You can watch it on there. People have been watching. I was watching on here, making sure it was working, and it's working. So
okay.
right then, Joe, I will say thank you very much for coming on the show. It's been great having you on the show, and I'll
Yeah,
say good night and God bless to you.
yeah. Same to you.
Thank you very much. So
All right.
it's Russ saying thanks.